Hey Rectangle Watchers, welcome to Tune In Tab Out. You may like reading, but you may not like the reading part of it. So, here's my short story, Grawlix. You're welcome. The acrogram on her doorstep perplexed her to say the least. None sends fizzy letters anymore, Z thought aloud to herself as she usually did. She lightly lifted the folded paper off of the floor. With such a fragile material, she always feared it would tear. As if holding a bomb, she cautiously unfolded the paper to place on the acrogram scanner. She paused, noticing full sentences with punctuation and spacing rather than the common strings of letters and numbers that made up most books at the time. Z worried. She worried that such a formal letter to a middle-class person such as herself could only mean an invitation to a memorial of someone close. Such fear was justified, but to her good fortune, Z was proven wrong from the moment she saw 5 letters. G, I, D, D, Y. She pulled the note from the scanner and read the light blue ink aloud. Good day, Ziu Asaf. Her own name looked foreign when spelled in its entirety. Z continued reading. You have been personally selected by the Great Ideas Department, don't you know, or as you may know us, the GIDDY, for your exceptional skill within the English language and global fame. Z stopped for a moment and read the line again. She did not understand what the paper could possibly mean by global fame. As she usually did, she quickly accepted her incompetence and returned to reading. Humanity needs your help to reconquer our little language we call English. At 12 p.m., please set your apartment's coordinates to X 300, Y -20, Z 1 for a personal meeting with President Wise Guy himself. Humanity appreciates your assistance. Postscript. Bring a pen. Though she did not entirely understand the letter, a huge sense of responsibility draped over her like a bright red cape. Z took a fleeting glance at her simple digital clock and read the time as it changed from 1:29 to 1:30. Z spent the next 2 seconds content with the new information. Upon the delayed realization of her tardiness, she spent the next 34 seconds stumbling and tumbling out of her pajamas and into her suit and tie, whilst desperately punching the coordinates of her flat's control computer, much like a child who had forgotten their own phone number. With no more sensation to a sound similar to that of an abacus, she felt her apartment shuffle next to all the others, traveling hundreds of miles in a matter of seconds, and coming to rest at X 300, Y -20, Z 1, where the famous GIDDY would receive her. The docking flat was larger and cleaner than Z's tiny apartment, which did not surprise her in the slightest. The entire complex was lit with bright old-fashioned bulbs that hovered just over top the heads of the various granite statues of previous wise guys. Z closed the door to her apartment behind her with haste, to prevent the impatient eyes of her fellow guests gandering at the mess she left in her wake. Her host marveled at her from across the marble hall. Wise Guy took a long look at her. Z stepped away from her docked apartment. His turtle-like gaze did not adjust to see her again. It simply stared off to the wall Z's head once obstructed. A long silence, adjusted by the occasional clearing of a well-dressed man's throat, ensued. Z took it upon herself to fix the silence. "See sleep?" she asked in an overpowered formal tone. "'S just thinkin'," the well-dressed man stated with a glare that somehow shot across the room and filled Z's nose with the scent of cheese. The small bulb above Wise Guy's head burst into a blinding light. "Oh, you must be the anonymous internet politician, Ziu Asaf. I'm very sorry. I only recognize you by your IP address." He spent the next 2 minutes reciting the entire IP address code to her apartment's wireless internet. As he recalled the long list of numbers, Z tried her best to understand what he meant by anonymous internet politician. Of course, like many things that she did not understand, she intended to accept it wholeheartedly until it could cause noticeable inconvenience. "Sorry to leave you waiting," Z apologized. "No need," President Wise Guy exclaimed. "Now that we are all together, there is something important to address. I had an idea." His use of full-formed words made his language difficult for Z to decipher. "I found a book in my library that dated back to 2015. He pulled out an almost entirely moth-eaten magazine, no more than 40 pages thick. He cleared his throat before reading. "Richard Gettenplenty delivers an excellent pizza," Wise Guy boasted. The quotation marks surrounding the word pizza somehow disturbed and confused Z. She decided not to ask. "It is a true marvel of language. Full sentences that form a pure The loud noise that replaced the mysterious word rung through Z's ears painfully. "Sorry, that word is saved for a later conversation." He continued his interrupted sentence, uttering his first words cautiously, as if in fear of an explosion. "A pure example of literature that can make you feel real sensations. Is that not incredible?" One of the esteemed guests, with a shadowed neckbeard, broke into a fit of hyenan laughter, while snapping his fingers as if he was applauding a poetry reading. His behavior ceased when a well-dressed man stomped hard on his right foot. President Wiseguy continued uninterrupted. "I was inspired, so much so that I have devised a little—" Z could not tell if he paused for dramatic effect or simply to pick a word that fit well with his motivational monologue. "Crusade for you all." He gestured with an open palm to a woman in a white coat behind him. "Dr. Astrogius will take good care of you until our next meeting in 10 minutes. The halfway beatnik began laughing at the sheer length of her name, but desisted as soon as he discovered the glares from each and every member of the new odd party. The woman in the white coat punctuated the silence with the snapping of her rubber gloves. "I guess you're going first, Elmer Lucky." In the time Z had before her appointment with Dr. Astrogius, she had just enough time for a good 2 deep minutes of worry and confusion. She knew all about Elmer Lucky, or El Lee, from the hours she had spent on the net, listening to his sit-down comedy shows, and laughing at the summaries and explanations other viewers would put up on the web. She had always imagined him to be wise and charismatic, but here he seemed nothing more than a lumber-skinned slob in a black turtleneck and sunglasses. Z quickly accepted the facts and moved on to the next subject of her anxious agenda. The constant mention of literary genius eluded her, and it seemed to her that she was alone in her ignorance. It was hard to make Zia sad for long, but when she was worried about being left out, almost anything could get to her. To her good fortune, the feeling evaporated as soon as Dr. Astrogius called her name. "Ziu Asaf." Her voice was much calmer than before. It beckoned rather than barked. Zia followed her into a small white marble room. She recognized the smell instantly. "You work with nanobots." Dr. Astrogius giggled as she adjusted the small drill. "Why, yes. Don't worry. These ones are just sterilizing the air. You can smell them." Zia replied affirmatively, with a nod that shook the entire office. "I'm impressed. Is that how you make your living while you preach?" "Nope. I never figured out how to write a resume, so I just work for a friend of my ma, as a grease monkey. Making nanobots is still fun, though." Dr. Astrogius couldn't help but look confused, but Z didn't mind. Dr. Astrogius gestured for permission to begin work in Z's mouth. Z shrugged and nodded. Dr. Astrogius returned to their conversation, despite the drill in Z's face. "How old are you, Z?" 16. Z sputtered over the drone of the drill. "Really? Only 16? At your age, I had only just finished high school." "Please spit into this vacuum." Z did as she was instructed, choosing not to tell the doctor that she had never attended school. "I replaced one of those old fillings with a special form of nanobot. President Wiseguy will inform you further." "Thanks, Doc." "Oh, it's probably a good idea to avoid contractions, dear. Just a heads up." Z pretended that she understood, and with a spring in her step, left the small white office. Wiseguy looked more like a stereotypical supervillain the longer Z looked at him. With his revolving chair, his constantly crossed legs and slouched posture, his head as bald as a bulb, shaded by his riot shield-like leather popped collar. If it were not for his friendly, vacant expression, Z could have never trusted him. Z waited a few minutes more as Wiseguy drew the fine line between thinking and sleeping with his eyes open. Immediately as the well-dressed man took his first step into the door, Wiseguy erupted with chatter as if he hadn't spoken all day. "Excellent! We are all here. This will be our base of operations. You will coexist with one another and keep up your work as literary geniuses for the next 5 months. Now here's the twist. Your vocabulary must be diverse. If you exceed the monthly limit of uses for a particular word, the nanobots in your teeth will remove the word from your vocabulary forcefully until the month is over. Avoid contractions, poor grammar, and the use of words too powerful for casual contexts. At the end of these 5... All the guests covered their ears to block out the sharp sound. Wiseguy returned to his speech. "At the end of these," he counted on his fingers, 20 weeks or so, I will allow you to leave, and the world will be a better place. Good day." Z could tell that no one felt like talking after Wiseguy's last speech. she decided to depart to her shuffle flat to temporarily contemplate and write to her mother and employer. When she set foot in her apartment, she could see her acrogram scanner was gone, and that in its place was an old typewriter on a dark mahogany desk. Hey Rectangle Watchers, sorry for the hiatus. If you guys enjoy Grawlix and want more of it, or just enjoy hearing my short stories, feel free to let me know. I love making them. They're much easier than most episodes, surprisingly. Well, I'll see you guys later. Ciao.